Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. Let us begin with a peace chant from the Vedas. We have seen this peace chant before. It's very interesting. This has 4 parts in it. Om Apyayantu mamangani Vak pranaschakshushrothram Athabalam indriyani cha sarvani Sarvam brahmopanishadam Maham brahma nirakuryam Mama brahma nirakarot Anirakaranamastu Anirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. I pray to the Divine Lord that all aspects of my personality, including the body, mind, sense organs, the vital force, prana shakti and strength, may they all increase in strength and function in perfect harmony with each other. This whole physical universe, the cosmos, visible through the sense organs to the mind, is nothing other than the ultimate reality called Brahman or Atman in the Upanishads. May I always remember this truth. May I not reject this truth. May I strive to the best of my ability in this life to experience this truth, that everything is divine and I am that divine self too. As I am engaged in this noble effort of realizing my true divine nature, may all the virtues described in the Upanishads come to me. All the virtues such as truthfulness, strength, purity, straightforwardness, may all those virtues come to me and reside in me. Om peace, may there be peace in our hearts, peace and harmony in our hearts. May there be peace and harmony amongst all the beings, and may there be peace everywhere in nature. Let us now continue our study of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The last 3 verses are remaining. For some time now, we have been studying the qualities of a sage of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna, a person whose awareness is constantly and unwaveringly established, anchored in the self. A sage of steady wisdom remains unaffected by desires. We are now studying verse number 70 in second chapter 270. Just as the ocean remains unaffected, unaltered, though numerous rivers empty their waters, constantly empty their waters into the ocean, and also rainfall adds more water to the ocean, but still the ocean absorbs all of them and remains unaltered. In the same way, a sage of steady wisdom, though living in the midst of sense organs, like everybody else living in the same world, surrounded by so many temptations and disturbances, still remains absolutely unaffected by those, remains calm and peaceful. This is explained in this verse number 70. So let us chant the verse number 70. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvat Tadvat-kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantimapnoti na kama-kami. Numerous rivers from all directions continuously empty their waters into the sea. Rainfall from above also adds water to the sea. Yet the sea remains stable. It absorbs all the water coming into it and remains unaltered. Similarly, a sage of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna, though surrounded by sense objects, does not yield to temptation and remains unaffected by desires. Vishaya Sannidhau api, Shankara says in the commentary. Vishaya means all kinds of sense objects. Sannidhi means proximity. We live in the midst of sense objects. Our body itself is a sense object. Our mind is a sense object. Our thoughts are sense objects. Though we are surrounded by the sense objects, unlike an ordinary person, Sthita Prajna remains totally unaffected by any of them. He remains calm and peaceful, his awareness anchored in the self within. Such a person is called Akamahataha. This term Akamahataha comes about 7 or 8 times in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Akamahata means one who is not afflicted by desire. Desire is an affliction. The moment a desire arises in a person's mind, even a good desire such as wanting to help somebody else, a good desire such as wanting to have more devotion to God, a good desire such as wanting to realize one's true nature, is all noble desires. We have to have these desires. Even when such a desire arises in the mind, it means that we have not reached that goal. We have not reached perfect devotion, pure devotion. We are not experiencing our divine nature, and we are seeing other people who need help in this world. So when these kinds of thoughts arise in the mind, that means we are already departed from our pristine state of perfect existence. If you are Satchidananda, then who is the other? There is only one Satchidananda. Where is the other to whom we should help? And if we are experiencing that our divine nature, then what else is there more to be achieved? There is no desire. Such a person has no desire. So we are going to come back to this topic a couple more times in this chapter. Desirelessness is perfection. Desirelessness is liberation. That is what the last 3 verses of this second chapter are going to tell us. Only such a person achieves lasting peace. So Shanti Mapnoti. Shanti here is translated by Shankara as moksha, liberation. Shanti is not the peace that we ordinarily enjoy in our day-to-day life. If nothing is bothering us now, we are peaceful for some time, and the next moment something else happens and our peace is disturbed. Not that kind of peace. This is everlasting peace, peace that comes only by knowing the self. In Christian terminology, there is a peace that passeth understanding. That's right, Swamiji? That kind of peace. Not ordinary peace we experience every now and then, nothing is bothering us, I'm peaceful and something happens. Not that kind of peace here is translated as liberation, that nothing can disturb. Staying in that state of mind of perfect peace, nothing disturbs such a person. And in the 6th chapter of the Gita, we are going to study, that is the highest that a human being can achieve. Yasmin sthitao dadukhena gurunapi vichalyate. Established in that kind of peace, even the severest of calamities cannot make any dent in that person's mind, any disturbance in that person's mind. We remain absolutely unaffected by anything whatsoever ever that may happen. That is what such kind of peace a person enjoys when a person can remain unaffected by the onslaught of desires from all directions. that this world is throwing all these temptations towards us. If one person can resist those temptations, if a person can remain established in one's own divine nature, transcending the body mind awareness, then such a person has achieved the highest that anyone can achieve, the highest flight of achievement that one person can achieve, that is liberation. Sashanti mapnoti na kama kami. An ordinary person is called as a kama kami. Kama kami means one who has desire for sense objects. The moment we have a desire, that means we are imperfect, and the desire propels us to take some action, and we take some action, we have the karma phala, the result of action, and the result of action produces more desires, and then the cycle continues and the rebirth and so on. So we are back into the cycle of transmigration, birth and rebirth. Such a person has escaped from that loop and no longer goes back to that domain of ignorance. Sashanti mapnoti na kama kami. That is verse number 70 in chapter 2. Now we go to the next verse, verse number 71. In this verse, Sri Krishna further expands this same theme and says that only a sage who can conquer all desires can achieve everlasting peace. So this is the verse number 71 in second chapter. Vihaya kamanyas sarvan pumam charati nispraha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashanti madhigacchati. Vihaya kamanyas sarvan pumam charati nispraha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashanti madhigacchati. A person who, giving up all desires and objects except basic necessities such as food and clothing, etc. A person who, giving up all desires and attachment to sense objects, lives without seeking anything and free from all sense of I and mine. Such a person achieves everlasting peace. In this verse, there are three things to be noted. First of all, sarvan kaman vihaya means giving up all desires. We will have to understand how and if we can give up all desires. In the 7th chapter, verse number 11, 7:11, easy to remember. Sri Krishna says, so many desires arise in our minds constantly. Something or other is happening in our mind. Then first thing we have to do is to sort out what kind of desire is this. Before impulsively jumping to fulfill the desire, we should examine it. This desire has come. Let me see what does it involve. What is the price to be paid to fulfill the desire? How much happiness it will bring? For how long will that happiness last? And if I fulfill the desire, it may make me happy, but what is the effect of this action on other people? On other people, animals, plants and nature. How does it affect other beings? Now and in the short term and in the long term. Everything may be all right for today, tomorrow, next month, but 3 months later or a year later, if this produces some adverse effect on me or somebody else or something else, even inanimate objects, we have to be careful to prevent such occurrence. Sarvan kaman vihaya. And then there in the 7th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. Viruddha means opposed to dharma. Dharma aviruddha means desires that are not opposed to dharma. There are dharmic desires. Dharmic desires are those which are in conformity with dharma, doing good to others, becoming a better person, helping somebody, raising the family in a dharmic way, making money in a dharmic way, and spending money for dharmic purposes. These are all okay desires on a day-to-day basis. Adharmic desires are those which are very bad desires. For example, people indulge in all kinds of entertainment just to entertain themselves. 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was this famous incident. There are some people who engage in dog fighting, cock fighting in India, dog fighting here. They train dogs to fight with each other, and they have to fight. If they don't fight well, they are going to kill the dogs, torture the dogs and kill the dogs. And then there was this famous football player, Michael Vick, I think. He was the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons football team. He was engaging in this sport, dog fighting sport. Cruelty to animals is illegal in this country. If anybody causes cruelty to animals, it is a punishable offense. But these people engage in such sport. That brings them happiness. What kind of happiness it is, we cannot understand, but that's what they do for happiness. Those are things, adharmic desires. Eventually that person went to jail. So that kind of desire should not even enter our minds. Dharmic desires are okay. So first of all, give up all adharmic desire, first stage. And second stage, then you think about the desire. What are the consequences? How much happiness it will bring for how long? And how does it affect other people, animals, plants, things and nature now and later? So this kind of thinking has to be done before we jump into fulfilling our desires. Eventually all desires have to be given up. Sarvan kaman vihaya. That's the last stage. Puman nispraha sarati. Sarati means moves. Moves means lives like everybody else in this world. Sutta prajnas also live in the same world, same society, same place where we live. But their minds are always established in the self within or on God, thinking about God, praying to God, praising the glories of God. That way also it is possible. Then for this to happen, one should give up all desires for enjoyment here and hereafter. Some people have desire for heavenly felicity. They want to, after giving this birth ends, they want to go to heaven and enjoy their heavenly happiness for a long period of time. To achieve that one, they perform all kinds of sacrifices and everything. That desire also has to be given up. In the Viveka Chudamani, Shankara describes the renunciation as Ihamutra phalabhoga viragaha. Iha means in this world, whatever happiness we expect to find in this world. Amutra means hereafter, in the life hereafter. There also we should not have desire for enjoyment in heaven also. Viragaha, giving up all desires for enjoyment here and hereafter. Sarvan kaman vihaya. Nispraha, free from desires. Then two more things have to be done. Nirmamaha, nirhankaraha. Such a person enjoys total, lasting, everlasting peace. Now let us see what three things have to be done to enjoy that kind of peace. First thing is giving up desires. Sri Ramakrishna also had desires once. Once he got a desire to wear a gold embroidered shawl, and he wanted to smoke a hookah, a gudgudi, and then he wanted to wear a gold chain. Some desire like this came. He asked Mathur Babu to procure those things. Mathur Babu procured those things. Sri Ramakrishna wore the shawl and he put on the chain and then he smoked the gudgudi. And then he says to his mind, this is the happiness that we get by wearing a shawl. This is the happiness by smoking the gudgudi or hookah. This is the happiness by wearing a gold chain. This is it, nothing else. This is not worth it. He threw them all away and spat upon them. As long as we have desires in the mind, we have no peace. Even if there is one desire, it bothers us. It makes us get up and go and do something to fulfill the desire. To illustrate how desire causes unhappiness, absence of peace, if there is no desire, total peace. If there is even one desire, there is no peace. To illustrate this one, Sri Ramakrishna used to narrate a parable. That parable comes in the Avadhuta Gita, a part of Bhagavatam. There was a kite. A kite once caught a fish, and then it was holding the fish in its beak. It was going in search of some place to sit down and eat the fish. It was flying. When the kite was flying to find a place to sit down and eat the fish, hundreds of crows followed the kite, and all of them wanted to snatch the fish from the kite's bill. Wherever the kite went, there the crows followed them, making lot of noise and trying to make the kite drop the fish so they can eat the fish. Wherever the kite went, there the crows followed, hundreds of them, making lot of noise. There was no peace. Finally, the kite became tired and the fish fell off from its beak, and the crows went after the fish, left the kite alone. The kite went and sat on a tree peacefully. Then it thought, as long as I had the fish in my beak, the crows were chasing me, gave me no peace. Now that fish has gone, I am peaceful, and they are out going after the fish. Keeping the fish in the beak means having a desire in our mind. As long as we have even one desire in the mind, so long we have no peace. We have to do something to fulfill the desire. Then what happens? We have seen the consequences of desire in the earlier verses 62, 63. Desire brings temporary peace and happiness, and again, if the desire will not go away, it will come back again stronger, demanding more. And a stage will come when we cannot fulfill the desire anymore, and then the desire that frustration turns into anger. Anger causes delusion. Krodha adbodh sammoha. Delusion causes loss of memory. Loss of memory causes loss of intellectual thinking power. We cannot distinguish what is right, what is wrong, and we end up in deep trouble. All those things we have seen before. So desirelessness is the ideal. But some desires will be there. Basic desires to take care of one's body. One has to go to work every day, do the job with diligence and honestly, and those things have to be done. Other desires, some harmless desires, they can be fulfilled. For example, if you feel like drinking a cup of coffee, there's no harm in drinking a cup of coffee. As long as it does not become an addiction, it's okay to fulfill simple desires, as Sri Ramakrishna did by procuring the shawl and the hookah and the golden chain. Another thing that can be done is to replace the desire with something that is better, maybe a better desire. For example, if you want to have a desire to watch a movie, you can watch a good movie. There are so many good movies which are uplifting and noble themes. We can watch those movies. Or if you want to eat a cake, you can eat a carrot instead. Instead of eating a carrot, you can fulfill the desire to eat by eating a carrot instead of a cake. So substituting one desire for another desire which is less harmful or a little bit better desire. Then the fourth thing that we can do is to pray to God to make our mind free from desiring. When we do Ramnam chanting, once a month we do in our Vedanta center, the first Saturday evening every month. Then there is a prayer. Tulsidas composed this very nice prayer. There he prays to God to make our mind free from all defects such as anger, desire, jealousy, pride, etc. It's a very nice prayer. We should chant it fairly often. It's very good for our minds to chant such prayers. There the prayer says, Nanya Spriha Raghupate Hridaye Asmadiye Satyam Vadami Cha Bhavan akhilantaratma satyam vadami cha bhavan akhilantaratma bhaktim prayacha ragupungava nirbaram me kamadidosarahitam kuru manasam cha. Mama manasam, my mind, kamadidosarahitam kuru, make it free from all the defects such as kama, krodha, lobha, just lust, anger, greed, pride, jealousy, fear, etc. So prayer also helps. In this context, we can remember the prayer that Sri Ramakrishna taught his disciples, all of us, how to pray when we pray to God. This is on page 731 in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in the English New York edition of the Gospel, page 731. There this prayer is given, and it is very nice to repeat this prayer every day, almost every day or every day, every now and then, as a part of our daily spiritual devotional practices. There he says, O Divine Mother, I have taken refuge at thy holy feet. I don't want bodily comforts. I do not want name and fame. Then I don't have anybody else. I don't want the 8 occult powers. I have nobody else in this world other than you. I have taken refuge in you. May I not have any attachment to lust and greed in this world, full of temptations. I have no austerities. I don't know how to worship. I don't have the strength of mind. Please grant me that I may have pure devotion to the lotus feet. That prayer, in any language we can chant. So prayer helps to make our mind free from desires. So this first thing, 3 things are mentioned in the verse number 71. First thing is to give up desires in stages. Second thing is mamatvam, giving up mine. If we really ask ourselves this question, what is truly mine? We often say, this is mine, this is my house, my car, my money, my child, my job, my position. We won't say things which are not mine as mine. My university, as if I own the university. My university is like this. My department, my company is not my company. I'm only a clerk in the company, but I refer to it as my company. So we should pause and ask, what is truly mine? What do I really own? Do I own anything at all? Is the body mine? I refer to this as my body, my work. The body mine? Do I own the body? How much control do I have? These kinds of questions we should ask and reflect upon these questions. If we ask, it's surprising. We don't own anything. We didn't bring anything. The only thing we own is our own thoughts, our own karma. That we have to own. Our thoughts, our karma, that consequences will come to us. We have to own that one. Other than that, what goes with us? Nothing goes with us. Only our thoughts, our karma, what we did, good and bad, only those things will go with us when we depart from this world. So really, how to deal with the possession? Sri Ramakrishna gives a very good example. When having so many, we have to have possessions. We have to have a place to stay. We have to have food to eat. We have to have clothes to wear. So many things we need for a daily life. When we have these things, we should not think that we own these things. We are only temporarily in charge of these things. We are at best caretakers of these things. We are servants, we are managers, but you are not the owner. The Lord is the owner. He owns everything. God owns the whole universe and us also. We also belong to Him. Everything we have belongs to Him. But for conversation purposes, we can say, my book, my house, my car, my child, my job. We can say that one. Sri Ramakrishna says when a maid servant works in the house of a rich man in the city, she refers to that house as my house, my garden, my Rama, my Hari. They are the master's children, but refers to them as my Rama, my Hari. But she knows very well that none of them belongs to her. They belong to somebody else. But for conversation purposes, we can say, yes, my house, my car, my child, my money, my job. But verily we should know none of these things belongs to us. They all belong to the Lord. I am only a temporary caretaker. I should take care of all these things given to me by the Lord. House, job, property, money, children, family members, everything, body, everything. We take care of them nicely, properly, as they have been given to us by the Lord. Why did these things come to me? Because I had a desire to have these things. Nothing comes to me, good or bad, property or possession, unless I have wanted it at some time or other. Unless I have paved the way for it at some time or other. That is the truth. Therefore, we should say, we can say, my Rama, my Hari, my job, my money, my child, but in our mind we should know that all these things belong to the Lord. I am not the owner. I am only a temporary caretaker. For some time only these things are in my charge, and I have to take care of them properly, and once they leave, I will have done my duty and I will be relieved. When all these things leave as they do, inevitably, we should have a sense of relief and gratitude, and we should be able to say, as long as these things were with me, I took good care of them, I treated them properly, kindly, nicely, I did my duty, I did my work to the best of my ability, with diligence and sincerity. Now they have been taken away from me. I am thankful for this opportunity, I am happy, I am relieved, I have done my duty, I am free. With that sense of great relief and gratitude, we should be able to part with everything, as everything will leave us at some time or other. All those things will be there and we have to leave this scene. So that is one way to deal with possessions. Regarding family members, relatives, children, friends, co-workers, we should see all of them as children of God, and we should do our duty by them, and we should know in our minds that all these associations are temporary, and sooner or later these associations will end. In regard to work and the fruit of work, we have been instructed many times in the Gita, throughout the Gita, that all work has to be done as an offering, as a service, as a servant serves the Lord. Bhritya iva sarvani karmani koromi Ishwaraya na mama phalaya na mama phalayati. Sri Shankaracharya says, when you do some work, we should do it with the attitude that I am doing all this work as a servant of the Lord, for the Lord Ishvara, not for my benefit. I am doing it as an offering to Him, as my worship of Him. All work has to be done as worship. Then there will be no attachment. Sangam tyaktva, giving up attachment, offering our work and the fruits of our work. Karma phala both have to be offered to the Lord, and you are free from attachment. Once something is offered to somebody, then we are free from that position. Whatever happens to that is no longer our concern. So we become free from attachment to work and the fruits of work. Also other things such as position, power, these things are temporary, and we should know that sooner or later these things will go away. So we should not become attached to them. We should not assume that they will always be there with us. These are instructions for people who have to have some possessions. Ideally, a sannyasi should have no possessions at all. There are some people who don't keep anything. They are wandering monks. They don't have any property, no possession, no ashrama, no place to stay. They keep going from place to place and eating whatever food chance brings. A sannyasi should have no possessions, no attachment to anything. In the Song of Sannyasin, there is the famous song composed by Swami Vivekananda in 1895 when he was in the Thousand Island Park. There is this famous one stanza. There Swamiji says, "Have thou no home? What home can hold thee, friend? The sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance may bring. Well cooked or ill judge not. No food or drink can taint that noble self, which knows itself, like rolling river free thou ever be. Sannyasin bold say Om Tat Sat Om." Very noble idea, but difficult to practice. even if we have possessions, we need to have some possession, basic things we need to have. We have to have a place to stay, we need clothes to wear, we need food to eat, we need other things for daily necessities. But when we have all these things, we should give the notion of ownership. For conversation, we say, ease of conversation, we can say my house, my Rama, my room, my Hari, my book, my money, etc. But in our mind, we should be sure that none of these things belong to us. I am not the owner. I am only a caretaker, a manager, the temporary manager, and a servant on behalf of the Lord, who is the owner of everything. I do all my duties and keep all these things and maintain them in good condition as long as they are in my possession. This is the way to give up mamatva, giving up desires, giving up mine. Now the last thing, most difficult thing is giving up I. Nirmamo, nirhankaraha, nispraha. Three things are coming in verse 71. Nispraha, giving up desires. Nirmama, giving up mind feeling, and nirahankara, giving up the notion of I, ego. Hardest thing to do. Ego will not go easily. Sri Ramakrishna says, let the rascal stay, but stay as a paka, as he says. Let it stay as a ripe ego. Unripe ego is thinking that I am the head, I am the manager, I am the owner, I am a big person, I have all these properties and I know more about everything else than anybody else. This is all signs of unripe ego. A ripe ego means humility. I am a child of God, I am a servant of God, I have all these things, but these all belong to the Lord, and I am not the owner. I am a devotee, I am a child, I am a servant, and I do all my duties as a service, as offering to Him. And I worship God. God is my father, God is my mother. In this way, keeping the I, but giving it a lower position, modifying the position, is called ripe ego. Sri Ramakrishna said that we can worship God in many different ways. God can be thought of as our father, mother, as our child, as our friend, as our master, oneself being the servant. All these are different bhavas, attitudes with which we can relate to God. And Sri Ramakrishna, after practicing all these various bhavas, all these various attitudes, he came to the final conclusion and said, worship of God as mother is the last word in spirituality. Very famous saying. Worship of God as mother is the last word in spirituality. When these three things are given up, so I can stay, but as a ripe ego. I am the servant, I am a child, I am a servant of God. I am not giving up the notion I am the owner, I am the manager, I am the head, I know more, giving up all those notions of unripe ego, keeping the mind, giving it a humble position, I am a child, I am a devotee of God. When all these three things are given up, first of all, desire for enjoyment, nisprahaka. Secondly, giving up the notion of mind, mamatva, nirmamo bhutva. Third thing is giving up the notion of I, ahankara. Then what happens? The verse number 71 says, Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. Brahma Nirvana means the status of being one with Brahman. Liberation. Brahma Nirvana Mrichati means he attains state of liberation. When these three things are to be given up, then a person achieves total peace, everlasting peace, and achieves liberation from the cycle of birth and death. That is the end of all transmigratory suffering. Transmigratory suffering means suffering in each birth. We keep on taking birth after birth after birth because we have desires, and we do action produces a result of desire, karma phala, and then they necessitate more action, and the cycle continues. That cycle will stop, we exit from that loop, and then we are established in total peace and enjoy identity with the supreme reality called Brahman in the Upanishads. Brahma Nirvanam Richati achieves total complete liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Desirelessness is liberation. We go to the last verse in the second chapter, verse number 72. Esha brahmi sthitih partha nainam prapya vimohyati stitva syamantakaalepi brahma nirvana mritchati. Esha brahmi sthitih partha nainam prapya vimohyati stitva syamantakaalepi Brahma Nirvana Mritchati. This is the status of Brahman, O Arjuna. Attaining this state, no one gets deluded anymore. Abiding in it, at least at the last moment, one gains super consciousness in Brahman. That is the translation. Brahmi Sthiti means becoming one with Brahman, merging in Brahman, giving up individual identity, such as a river which has its own identity, its own course. It has a name and it has its own course. It flows for many, many miles, hundreds of miles. Eventually, when it merges into the ocean, then what happens? The river has no longer its individual identity. There is no longer the river. It becomes one with the ocean. It becomes the ocean. Only ocean remains. When the Ganga river or Yamuna river merges into the ocean, in the ocean there is no separate compartment for Ganga river, for Yamuna river. Ocean is only one vast expanse of water, like Brahman. Brahman is like ocean. All the rivers are like individual beings, seekers. So there is a very nice verse in the Mundaka Upanishad. That verse illustrates how an individual seeker eventually reaches Brahman. Brahman becomes one with Brahman, Brahmi Sthiti, achieves Brahmi Sthiti, giving up his individual identity as a separate seeker. The verse is like this: Yatha nadyaha syandamanaha samudre astam gacchanti namarupe vihaya tatha vidwan parat namarupad vimuktaha parat purusham prapyati apnoti. Nainam prapya vimohyati. Once truth is known, enam means this everlasting peace. Enam prapya navimohyati. Once this eternal peace is experienced, then there is no going back to the domain of ignorance, samsara chakra. Once you exit from the loop, if you are going in a loop, as there are some loops around certain cities in this country. Columbus loop, famous capital loop, Baltimore has a loop. Once we take an exit from the loop, then we don't have to go back to the loop again. We go to our destination. Once you exit from the loop, you don't go back into the loop. What is the loop in which we are stuck now? First of all, the ignorance of our divine nature. Upanishad says you are that, Tattvamasi, I am Brahmasmi. We don't have that experience. We only know we are the body, we are the mind. Not knowing our true nature is ignorance, and as long as we are in that ignorance, then we are stuck in this loop. Ignorance leads to desire. Why desire comes in the first place, as we have seen before, when we were discussing verse number 60 to 63, why desire comes in the first place? Desire comes because of a feeling of emptiness, a feeling of imperfection. I don't know that I am Sachidananda. I am enjoying absolute, complete, total bliss. I don't know that one. I am stuck with the body, mind, awareness. So I am feeling this emptiness. I don't have this, I don't have that. If I get this, I will be happy. If I do that, I will be happy. That is desire. A feeling of incompleteness. That incompleteness shows that we are not where we should be. We should be established in the divine self. As Atman, we are not there. We are in the body-mind level. Therefore, desire comes. Desire is an imperfection, a departure from the pristine state in which we should be. When desire comes, we have to do karma. Desire propels us to take action. Ignorance leading to desire These are leading to action. Action leads to karma phala, fruits of action. Karma phala necessitates rebirth. And again the same cycle continues. So we are stuck in this loop. Once we exit from this loop, Nayanam Prabhu Nami Mohyati, the Sutta Prajna does not come back again to this loop of samsara chakra, transmigratory cycle of birth and death, birth and rebirth, birth and death and rebirth, birth and death and rebirth. That cycle, we will escape from that cycle, and we will no longer go back and get stuck in that cycle. This achievement is a one-time achievement. Once we reach that state of supreme peace, giving up desires, giving up attachment to things, giving up notion of egoism that I am this separate individual, once we reach the state of supreme peace, Shanti, then we don't come back to this domain of ignorance again. It's a one-time achievement. In the 8th chapter, verse number 16, Sri Krishna says, Mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanma navidyate. Mamupetya, by reaching me, by reaching God, punarjanma navidyate, there will be no rebirth. As long as we have not reached God, as long as we are in this domain of body-mind, then we are subject to rebirth. Rebirth means more suffering and continuation of the same cycle of suffering, desire, karma phala, rebirth, etc. Then again in the 15th chapter he says, Yadgatva nadivartante taddhama paramam mama. Dhamma means that abode, divine abode, that means being merged in Brahman. When we reach that stage once, Taddhama, Paramam, supreme abode, when we reach that supreme abode, Nanivartante, we don't come back to the domain of ignorance. We will not be born again as human beings or any being to go through this cycle of desire, suffering, etc. Once we experience our pristine nature as Sachidananda, we will never come back to this ignorant state of thinking, I am the body, I am the mind. When it can happen at any time, even it happens at the last moment of our life, antakalepi asyam stitva asyam antakalepi. Antakala means, Sankara translates as antye vayasi. It need not be, we don't have to wait until the last moment. Last moment what happens, we don't know. It may happen suddenly. We may not know that that's the last moment. He says, antye vayasi, even in advanced age, in younger years, we are involved in work and the job and property, family, children, all responsibilities and enjoyment and everything. But as one advances in age, Antyavayasi, even in old age, if we make sincere effort, strenuous effort to reach this peace, Brahma Nirvana, then that is the goal, reaching the goal of life. Brahma Nirvana, moksham, liberation. So, we have seen from the verse number 55 onwards, all these so many qualities of Chitta Prajna. When introducing this topic, Shankaracharya had said, we noted that while these qualities describe Chitta Prajna, they also have a prescriptive, they also are a prescription for people like us who are not Chitta Prajnas yet, to practice these virtues so that we can all become Chitta Prajnas. We have to, and we should, and we will, because that is our destiny. We are that intrinsically. The notion that I am the body-mind is only a temporary cloud which is covering the true knowledge. This cloud has to be removed. All we have to do is to remove this ignorance that I am the body-mind. Then the truth will dawn by itself. We don't have to do anything to bring that truth. It is not the result of effort. All effort is needed only to remove the cloud of ignorance, and then our divine nature will stand revealed. Then we realize, that's why we use the word realization. We realize that I was always this, I never knew that one. But I have always been this, I never was the body-mind. I have always been this Atman, but simply I did not know that ignorance is gone now and I am my own self. That realization will come. In the 8th chapter, Sri Krishna says, if you want to remember God at the last moment, then we have to practice remembering God every moment from this moment onwards. Because whatever thought is uppermost in our minds at the last moment of this life, that will indicate our destination, where we go after giving up this body. In order to do that, in order to be able to think about God at the last moment of our lives, we should practice thinking about God, repeating God's name every moment. With every breath, we should remember God. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manusmara yodhyacha. Do your duty. Remember God every moment and perform your duty diligently as worship, as service, as offering. Their mind becomes pure and we will constantly remember God's name, and there is a very high probability that we will remember God's name at the last moment. Holy Mother has said, those who come to this path and remember, take refuge in Sri Ramakrishna, repeat his name, Sri Ramakrishna will come and guide us further at the last moment of our lives. With that, we shall conclude the study of the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter. Now we have a few more minutes. What I like to do in the remaining few minutes is to quickly highlight certain important topics we have studied in the second chapter. This is going to be a very quick summary of the second chapter. First of all, the very first word that Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. All first chapter was only Arjuna's lamentation of his confusion, of how he is confused and cannot fight. In the second chapter, when Sri Krishna begins to speak, there are two verses number 2 and 3 in the second chapter, very important verses. In those two verses, Sri Krishna asks Arjuna to be strong. It's a call for strength. Sri Krishna asks Arjuna, Kutastva kasmalamidam vishame samapasthitam anaryajustam asvargim akirtakaram Arjuna. From where this weakness has come upon you, which is unbecoming of you, uncharacteristic of a noble person like you. Klaibyam masmagamah partha naitatvayi papadyate shudram hridaya dorbalyam tyaktva uttishta parantapa. O Arjuna, scorcher of foes, give up this unmanliness, give up this faint-heartedness, give up this weakness and stand up and fight. Call for strength. Without strength, nothing can be achieved. In the Upanishad, it says, Nayamatma balahinena labhyaha. If a person is weak, mentally weak, spiritually weak, mentally weak, person cannot achieve anything in life, let alone spiritual illumination. Then there is verse number 13. This body goes through so many changes. Dehi nosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tata dehantara prapti. Childhood, youth, middle age, old age, death. These things are inevitable in everybody's life. Therefore, we should accept these inevitable changes and remain unaffected by them. Dhiras tatra namohyati. 2:30. 2:16 is the key verse. Very important verse. 5-star verse. 16th verse in second chapter. There Sri Krishna describes the difference between the real and the unreal. The whole idea of Viveka, distinction between the real and the unreal. Only real has existence, unreal has no existence. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. A couple of years ago, Swami Sarvapriyananda came to our center, and one evening he gave a talk. The whole talk was only on this one verse, 16th verse in second chapter. Very nicely, in the way only that he can explain the meaning of this verse. What is the real, what is unreal. To chapter 2, verse 16. Then in the verse number 20, Sri Krishna describes Atman. What is the self? As opposed to what is the body and the mind. The self is something that has no birth, no death, no old age, does not undergo any change, was always present, will always be present. Najayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Very similar verse comes, almost exactly same verse comes in the Katha Upanishad. Verse number 22 in second chapter. In this verse, we studied all these verses before, at least once or twice. Sri Krishna compares the body-mind to a garment that Atman is wearing. To the indwelling spirit, the body-mind is like a garment. When this garment becomes old, worn out, unfit to be used, it is cast aside, new garment is put on. He explains the phenomenon of the doctrine of rebirth by comparing the body-mind to a garment that a person is wearing. A person is not the garment. Whatever happens to the garment, person is not. If a garment is painted green, person does not become green. The wearer does not become green. Changes happen to the garment only. The wearer remains unaltered, unaffected. Then verse number 38, very interesting, important notion of equanimity under all circumstances. Equanimity in pain and pleasure, gain and loss, fame and infamy. In all these varying conditions of life, a Sita Prajna remains equanimous, and we have to emulate the Sita Prajna. Sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labha jaya jaya. Labha labha, gain or loss. Jaya jaya, success or failure. Sukha dukkha, happiness and happiness. Under all these varying conditions, we have to remain equanimous. A very important message of equanimity comes again and again, many times in the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. Verse number 47-48, very important. These two verses contain the gist of the entire Karma Yoga. These two verses are enough to understand the basic ideas of Karma Yoga. There Sri Krishna says, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhu ma te sangosta karmani. We have some freedom, some leeway, some jurisdiction only in regard to the work we do and not in regard to the fruits of action. We can ask the question, why I am the doer, why should I not be able to dictate what the outcome should be? That's not so, because the outcome of our work does not depend entirely, depends on other factors besides what we put into it. I put in some effort, but that's only one of the things that affects the outcome of the work. There are many other factors which you don't even know. They come into the equation and alter the situation and produce a result which is entirely different from what we had expected. We should be ready for that one. Accepting the outcome, success or failure with equanimity, because other factors will come and play a part in shaping the outcome of our work. We can ask the question, if I cannot dictate the outcome, why should I even bother to work? Mahate Sangosto Karmani, he says, we should not take recourse to inaction. First of all, inaction is impossible. Work is a physiological, psychological imperative. We can't remain without doing any work even for a short space of time. Secondly, we should do our duty. By doing our duty only we can make spiritual progress. Work is an opportunity for spiritual progress. Work is spiritual practice. By doing work alone we can reach the goal of illumination. So Mahate Sangostva Karmani. Summary of Karma Yoga in these two verses 47-48. Then 54, verse 54 in second chapter, Arjuna asked question. One of the most important questions he asked in the Bhagavad Gita, that is, what are the signs of Sita Prajna, sage of steady wisdom, that we studied in considerable detail in the last few weeks. In answer to this question, Sri Krishna in the remaining verses 55-72 gives a detailed description of Sita Prajna, which we have studied. Now, in the 2-3 minutes remaining, I shall point out 6 qualities. There are many more qualities that Sri Krishna described. 6 things I will point out which stand out, qualities of Sita Prajna. First thing is, much emphasis has been laid on this one quality. Conquering all desires. Desirelessness is liberation. First thing, we have seen how to conquer desires. Second quality, finding happiness within, not in sense objects. Atmanyeva atmana tushtaha. That comes in several places in this description. If we depend upon other outside objects, situations and activities and property, etc. for happiness, we will never get true happiness, because they are changing, fleeting, undependable. The only place where we can find lasting, everlasting peace and joy and happiness, unconditional, infinite, eternal happiness is the self within, and that is where Sthita Prajna finds happiness, not in the outside sense objects. Third quality of Sthita Prajna is equanimity under all circumstances, in pain and pleasure, in gain and loss, in success and failure, in fame and infamy, in good health and ill health, whatever happens, if Sthita Prajna remains unaffected by them, remains absolutely calm and peaceful. Fourth quality, we have seen the importance of conquering desires. When we don't conquer desires, then a series of steps will happen, consequences are there. Not conquering desires eventually results in great unhappiness, because if you fulfill the desire becomes stagnant, comes back again and demands more. If we don't fulfill it, or if we cannot fulfill it, then it turns into frustration. Frustration turns into anger. Anger turns into samoha, delusion. Delusion gives rise to loss of memory, smriti bhramsha. Smriti bhramshat buddhinasha, loss of thinking power. When a person is under the influence of anger, in a fit of anger, that person does not know what to say, what not to say, loses the ability to distinguish what is right, what is wrong, what is to be done, what is not to be done, where am I? Person forgets everything. Smriti bhramshat buddhinashat, absolute lost level he will go. He gives the Vivek Chudamani, you see the example of a child playing with a ball, dribbling the ball. It keeps going down and down, step by step, and does not stop its downward movement until it reaches the last stage where it cannot go down any longer. The same thing happens to a person's life. The person ends up in a jail or in a worse place. The total ruin will come. Though we should stop it at the very first stage. Then fifth idea is a control of sense organ. It was repeated several times in these verses. Control of sense organs, because if we don't control sense organs, then one thing leads to another, and then we will find only unhappiness. So last point, remaining unaffected by desires and unaffected by the attraction of sense objects, absorbing all desires like an ocean absorbs all the waters being poured into it by the rivers and by rainfall, and still remains unaltered. In the same way, the mind of a Sthita Prajna remains absolutely calm and peaceful, unperturbed under all circumstances, no matter how many temptations are there, what kind of situations one is put in, one remains totally unaffected, calm and peaceful, and free from all defects and desires. This state is called Brahmanirvanam, merging in Brahman, or liberation from the cycle of birth and death and all transmigratory suffering. So next time when we have an opportunity, we shall begin chapter number 3. Now I shall say the concluding prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may all be peaceful, may all be happy, may all be free from afflictions, may all realize what is noble and auspicious, may no one be subject to misery. Om peace, may there be peace in our hearts, may there be peace and harmony amongst all beings, may there be peace everywhere in nature. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all and stay well until next time.